And welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show. With me today, we've got Dan.
Oh, hello.
And as always, I'm your host, Simon Conboy. So, we've got free agency just around the corner. We've got the Combine, I think, is the next big event. But we'll get to that soon enough. But I think free agency, people got their eye on that already. Already starting to see some players starting to be released by teams. And some of these players are starting to get contracts done with their current team. So today's episode, we're just going to be going through some of the bigger names in what's pretty big free agency pool this year, particularly at the quarterback position. A lot more names than there would normally be, particularly some of the established players, and just discuss what teams you think might be in the market for those players and what may potentially get in the way of them being re-signed with their current teams where that's appropriate. So we'll start top of my list. I've not really individually numbered this. I've kind of just done it in tiers. However, I've got like a clear top tier player, and that would be Lev Bell. Safe to say he's probably the top overall player available in this year's free agency group. It sounds like there's a distinct possibility that he will hit free agency. Steelers, they got some doubts. Of course, he's been suspended a couple of times. He's one issue away from being suspended for an entire season. He's been injured throughout his career, touched the ball a lot over the last couple of years. He is only 26, and when he's fully healthy, you could make a legitimate argument he is the best all-round running back in the NFL. So that was quite a lot of information there.
Indeed.
Yeah. So where do you lie on Lev Bell? Do you agree best player in free agency this year?
Yes.
I mean, the only other comparable players I've really got here are DeMarcus Lawrence, who's not been doing it long enough, and Drew Brees.
Yes.
And Drew Brees is 39.
Is he? Bloody
Yeah.
hell.
I think that number would get more attention if it wasn't for Brady, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Drew Brees, retiring, as it were, anytime soon. He'll probably pull a Brady.
no, he won't. I can't see him retiring the next couple of years unless his arm really falls off. But sticking with Lev Bell, so you know the value of having top tier running back / receiver. David Johnson, Lev Bell, the closest comparison we've got. So you know the value of having. You saw what a difference it was not having him last year. But Bell wants to be paid in the vein of top receiver money. We've discussed this a couple of times. That's going to be hard for the Steelers to do.
Not pay him top receiver money.
To Lev Bell, yeah. I mean, Antonio Brown's on big money. Obviously, Ben's on big money. They've got some good offensive linemen. They've got some good defenders that will be coming up and need new contracts soon. This is a team that very rarely has a huge amount of money to work with as it is. So I personally think there's a very, very good chance that Bell does end up seeing free agency this year. I just don't know if the Steelers can chance paying him that kind of money.
It depends. I mean, he's extremely important to their game plan 9 times out of 10.
Oh, of course he is.
But I don't know. I mean, let's assume Roethlisberger's going to retire at some point. Is Lev Bell then becomes more of a key piece to keep going forward, as opposed to just kind of throwing him by the wayside? He's a bit more integral in the development of a new QB, which they will inevitably be getting at some point.
Well, I think the Ben situation is integral to it, because I think if they knew, say they knew Roethlisberger was maybe going to give them one more year, then I think it does become a lot easier to plan ahead. But as it is, he's non-committal about his future. He's not, like Breeze or Brady, who are like, I will play until I can plays no more. And So you don't know how to, because I think you do run the risk of obviously peeing players off, especially players like Roethlisberger and potentially Antonio Brown, if you get rid of a guy of this caliber. But you are running a huge risk. Again, bear in mind, any kind of infringement from this guy and he's suspended for the entire season.
Yeah, it's always a danger. But to be honest, you could apply this to any team that might want to pick him up as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is the risk. I mean, it would be a risk full stop. The money he is after, it would be a risk to pay him because he's a running back. You know, if there's one position that is, you know, hardest to rely on in terms of staying healthy, it's that position. And when you're asking for, you know, your top running back these days, 7-8 million a year, he's looking for basically double that. It's a tough sell. Obviously, someone will pay it. I just don't know if it's going to be the Steelers. I wouldn't be shocked to see them pay him, but I don't think he's going to be able to get as much as he wants or he could possibly get with that team. If he's after...
I mean, if I'm the Steelers, I'm keeping him regardless.
So you'd franchise him if you needed to?
No, I'd sign him to a long-term deal. I'd back end the deal or front load it, one of the two, for salary cap issues. But no, I would definitely have to keep him. I mean, you've got to be looking forward to the future here. I mean, unless you're gonna draft the running back to develop alongside a new QB, but Roethlisberger's not got long left. Let's be honest. His performance last year was great, but it wasn't. He didn't feel unstoppable as Roethlisberger used to do. You used to genuinely fear facing Roethlisberger, gunslinger tendencies and all. Last year, I just wasn't getting that. So they're going to be in the market for a new QB soon, and Le'Veon Bell would be a great way to alleviate pressure off a new QB. Much like whoever comes to Arizona, we've got David Johnson.
Well, he does change your offense. I mean, the ability to find a running... It's easy enough to find a replacement running back, I think. You won't get one of his quality in all likelihood, but one that can also do what he does in the passing game, you know, that's a big ask. He would change, he would change whatever offense he's in enormously. I mean, can you imagine some of these teams like, my lot in Tampa or the Giants or the Colts, teams that just haven't had a running back in forever, are all teams you could see potentially looking into signing this guy if he does become available. I do think the Steelers will find a way to get him under contract, but I don't think he'll get the money that he... Well, it'll come down to whether he's willing to take a discount. I can see him maybe, make him the highest paid running back, but he's not going to get that 15 mil or whatever it is that he's after. Not from the Steelers. If he wants that, then I think you'll see him somewhere else next year. It's such a unique situation. It's very hard to predict. So you say staying with the Steelers. I'm edging that way. So yeah, I'll say they find a way to get it done. It's hard to imagine a player of this caliber leaving in the modern NFL to go elsewhere. It just doesn't happen very often.
As I said, I stick by what I said. Steelers keep him. End of.
Yeah, I mean, the only other two players I've got in my top tier, Drew Brees. We won't even discuss this one too much. He's come out and said it's going to be with New Orleans, or it's not going to happen. Yeah, they'll get something done. He'll keep playing there until his arm falls off. That's fair enough, DeMarcus Lawrence is the other one for the Cowboys defensive end. He had an exceptional season. 15 sacks. Played pretty well against the run. One of those slightly risky ones where, of course, he finally has the exceptional season in a contract year. This just reeks of franchise tag.
Who, sorry?
This one reeks to me of franchise tag. Apparently the Cowboys have already said that they'll do it if they have to. I think this is a situation where for the player, it's probably the best he's going to get. I don't think they're going to give him an offer that would satisfy him for a long-term deal. So I think you're looking at a 1 year on the franchise tag. You know, it's a lot of money at the defensive end spot. I think it suits both parties, frankly. A bit of a 1 year wonder, but you know, young, talented pass rusher. Yeah, they're hard to find.
Well, definitely. I mean, look at Tampa Bay's issues you've had.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a good edge rusher. So, unfortunately, I can't see DeMarcus Lawrence being the next one in Tampa. Then we sort of get to the next tier of free agents. This one's obviously headlined by Kirk Cousins, who we discussed last week. Sounds like this week the Jets have been heavily rumoured to be putting together a big money deal for Cousins. If that's the way they choose to go, there's only a couple of teams that can compete with them money-wise, if that's how Cousins wants to do this. I mean, if he is just after money, you are looking at him being a Brown or a Jet next year.
But if he wants to be competitive, he's coming to either Arizona or the other team we discussed last week, whose name has escaped me.
Denver, Minnesota, or Buffalo.
Oh, I don't think Minnesota. Denver, that's the other one I meant.
Yeah, I still feel like Denver or Zona are the most likely, with probably just edging with him heading to Denver. Obviously, this is a guy with the potential to turn your team into a playoff contender if you're not already. I don't know, though, if he could go turn around one of those teams that's, you know, at Jets or Browns levels. A lot of question marks, particularly on the offensive side. So I'd be very questionable. I think it'd be very questionable that Cousins would make such a move. I think we're looking at him going to one of the competitive teams. But if you want to hear us talk about that, go check out last week's episode. But yeah, the Jets, I can't see it happening. Next up, Malcolm Butler, the victim of one of the strangest Super Bowl situations I think we've seen in, I was going to say in recent history, but frankly, in league history, this is probably up there with one of the strangest situations. I mean, this was an undrafted pleb turned Super Bowl hero, being one of the more consistent corners in the league. He's not a top talent, but he's a good player, a good zone guy, in my opinion. A willing run defender. I mean, today's NFL, this is the kind of player most teams could do with.
I'm not going to disagree with you there.
It is a tough one. I don't know how much money he'd necessarily command, because I don't think there's many teams that will view him as, you know, a true superstar number one corner. You know, we're not looking at a Marcus Peters, Patrick Peterson, Richard Sherman type lockdown man corner. I believe that's why the Patriots, you know, they invested in Stephon Gilmore last year. So it does limit, I think, the amount of money that Butler's likely to command. But I do still think, I still think he'll want some money. I think it will price him out of going to some of those more competitive teams that don't necessarily have the cap room, because corner money has gotten ridiculous in this league, thanks to some of those aforementioned players, and mainly Darrelle Revis, who've blown that market up recently. So when I look at some of the teams, I mean, you're looking at teams with a lot of cap space that need a corner. I think the Jets would make a lot of sense, and he might do that just to spite New England, which I wouldn't have thought was a thing. But with what happened in the Super Bowl, who knows?
It would be funny.
Yeah. I mean, if the Buccaneers don't change their defensive scheme, then he'd make a lot of sense there. They're a team that plays a lot of zone and needs all the corner help they can get, and they've got cap room for days. The Browns, they just need a corner. Again, cap room for days. The Titans could be a sneaky one. You know, they did sign Logan Ryan last year. Adoree Jackson was a rookie. I still feel like they could do with some more numbers. They're another team that I think can afford him. And I think he'd be a nice fit there. So that one could be interesting. Possibly even Washington as well. But and also the Bears. Bears are also in desperate need of a corner. But, I mean, it's the corner position. So many teams need them. I just think those are probably some of the favourites. If you were a team looking for a corner, would you have Butler on your list as a guy that you're willing to give top money to, or would you?
Not top money, no. I mean, it's actually good because this actually works with Zona. Is if I'm Zona and I'm looking defensively, I'm a defensive-minded coach, and I'm seeing Butler's on the market. I need someone who can help Patrick Peterson play. Butler might be a good option. He's not a true second corner, in my opinion, because he pretty much sits in the Z. But I don't know. It's difficult because I like him. I think he's good.
He's certainly a good player.
But he's basically a slot corner.
Well, he plays outside for the most part.
Yeah,
but
I know that. But the thing is,
I think
if you're a team that's got an average corner, so not Zona, Titans. Right, let's go with the Titans. They've got average as being generous. They've got 2 average corners, or just average secondary in general.
Well, they've got a talented rookie and some below average corners.
Either way, basically, in that type of system, he would thrive. He's not going to get exponentially targeted every play, every passing play. He can help support the rest of the guys in coverage. He'd be ideal in a scheme like that. If he went to somewhere like Arizona, it's the opposite. He will get targeted 99% of the time because the other target is Patrick Peterson, and you're not throwing at Patrick Peterson. He's going to have to play a lot of man because I doubt we'll change that up. I don't see us really changing to, full-on zone with Patrick Peterson, and that may not play to his strengths. I mean, he's not particularly fast. He's fairly athletic, but not freakish athletic.
Yeah, this isn't a super talent. I mean, the way I look at it, like if you're using the zone example, a team that plays a lot of man and in their case has the number one corner already, you can't look. If you look at like last year with the Jags signing Bouye is a guy that can play man, and that kind of Seahawks style that's become quite popular with a lot of teams, or what the Broncos have been doing over the years. I don't think this is that kind of guy. So I don't think he's worth that kind of money. If you're going to pay him the second tier money, even then, if you're running the kind of scheme that the Cardinals run and he can't do that effectively, it could end up being a big chunk of change, especially when you look at what you're paying Peterson. I mean, if you were paying Peterson and Butler, even if you're paying Butler second tier money, that's a lot of money invested in that position. So I think it's tough. I see him going to one of those teams I mentioned, one of the teams with a real need for a corner, full stop, that aren't necessarily committed to a certain style of corner at this point, and will maybe build around just having a guy with some talent back there. That makes the most sense to me because it doesn't feel like that kind of scheme risk. I think that's where you can potentially go wrong with a move like this. I think he's a smart player and he'll play well, but I think that those teams will get the most value out of him, and they'll have the money to pay him like a number one, which I think he's going to want to go after. I mean, he's 28. He's probably not going to hit the market again with a ceiling contractually like he's going to have this off season. Not too many other big names. I mean, there's a lot of depth in this year's free agency group I've mentioned before. It's quite deep in the secondary and at the guard position, some good interior linemen. Since we were just talking about Butler, I'd say is the top DB available. We'll go through some of those other guys, some of the guys just below him, and see what we think of them. Now, if you're talking a team like the Cardinals, I think a better option would be the Rams' Trumaine Johnson.
Really?
I think so. Wasn't the best season for him last year, dealt with some injuries, but he's been a reliable. Bear in mind, this is the guy they kept so they could because they trusted him more than Janoris Jenkins a couple of years ago, and he's been a very solid player for them for a number of years now. This is not necessarily the biggest name, but I think most guys around the league are well aware of who he is. He's been their number one for a while. I find it hard to imagine them letting him walk out the door, but they have franchised him a couple of times, so clearly they've been at an impasse over what to pay him. So, yeah, this guy's played a lot more man. I think if you're looking for a guy that could be a great number two across from Patrick Peterson, I think this would be the guy. You know, he comes from the division as well. I think the Cardinals would be a really nice natural fit. I think both them and the Niners are going to be teams that are going to go after this guy hard.
Well, he's definitely going to be a hot commodity on the market. That's for damn certain.
Yeah. And I think the amount of corners on this year's market will make things interesting. It might, slow the market down. Essentially, as I think, some teams might not let themselves go up too high. Like last year, there was Bouye. There really wasn't anyone else on that kind of caliber. This year, I think there's more guys of a lower quality, so you might not see that immediate rush to go get the top guys. And I think that could work to some teams' benefits. And I think this could be a player that, having mentioned he's been franchise tagged before, may have an idea what he's worth and just struggle to find it on the market, have to settle for a more team-friendly deal. I think that's where you might see a team like the Cardinals swooping. So whilst they do need that corner, I think they'll be more inclined to go for good value or get someone really young. Whereas the Niners, I think they could very well win that bidding war with just about anyone this off-season. Other cornerbacks, they got a lot of wiggle room in terms of cap. Another Rams DB, LaMarcus Joyner, I think he's one of the best options in free agency this year. Young player, was only drafted 2014. He was used in a really interesting manner this year. One of them kind of do-it-all Swiss Army knife defensive backs, playing a bit of safety, can play a little bit in the nickel. I think these are players that are in a lot of demand right now. I think scheme versatility, particularly in the defensive backfield, is vital. He's a good hitter, sort of player you could play in the box as well. If need be, he can cover tight ends and slot cornerbacks. And I don't think he's a particularly well known amongst a lot of fans. So this is a guy I could see being a great value for a team. And again, if you're on them teams with a really bad secondary, I think this is one of the guys you want to go sign. If you're a Buccaneers, a Browns, a Titans, because I can see the Titans cutting Jonathan Cyprian. I thought he was really poor this year. I think this is the kind of player you can bring in with an eye on, well, we're going to try and find other guys to play those spots. This is a guy that will fit in regardless of how things pan out, and he'll upgrade one of those two positions, if not both, over the course of the season. Yeah, definitely see him going to one of them teams. I think they'll be able to give him high-end starter money. I think the Rams will struggle to keep hold of him, and it's.
Well, the Rams are struggling for cap, if I remember correctly.
They're okay for cap at the moment, but they've got Aaron Donald to pay, so he's going to use up a fair chunk of change. Word is, and we'll get the player out of the way now, actually, because he is someone we're going to discuss. Sammy Watkins, apparently they are very much interested in keeping him on board.
Oh, but why? Why?
He
He rubbish.
The logic is simple with him. He opens up a lot in that offense.
Yeah, he opens it up. But at the same time, you've got to be able to actually catch at some point.
He can catch.
No, he can't.
He can. He's a really talented guy. He had that one great season when he was healthy in Buffalo. Health has been a problem, but
he's not worth money. I mean, pay him like.
I don't think he'll get money, and I think this is to some degree. I think it helps the Rams that he's had the injury history that he has had, but he is only 25,
Still.
and he was the guy that took the top off, that Deshaun Jackson type of role. And he did catch some deep touchdowns last year. I mean, he was one of them guys, didn't make many catches, but they were down the field. Had 8 touchdowns. And out of only 39 catches, that's pretty good. A pretty good rate. He was their home run threat. I don't think they're going to want to lose that. Those guys are not that easy to find. I mean, we've seen, take Ted Ginn. He's a guy we've laughed at a million times as football fans.
I never did. I like Ted Ginn, but that's because he's fast.
But he does the same thing.
Yeah,
you like it.
No,
he can't catch. His hands are terrible.
His hands are terrible. I mean, he went through that phase of actually being able to catch for a bit, and then, like in clutch situations, he remembered who he was. He's Ted
Sammy
Ginn
Watkins
Jr.
is a Ted Ginn with way more upsides, and I think the Rams are going to prioritise. they did trade for him last year. That I think that. If you trade for a guy, it tends to suggest you're going to want to maintain that having that player on your team, or the trade looks like worse value. So that I think will get done. It's one of those where I think it's hard to figure out how much to pay the guy, especially considering they paid a couple of other guys on the Robert Woods was probably one of their better receivers last year. That's. I think re-signing him might make it difficult to keep hold this pair of defenders, along with the large chunk of money that's going to go to the finest defender in the NFL at this point in Aaron Donald. Other defensive backs, I think the most intriguing other player for me is Morgan Burnett of the Packers. Now, if you've watched the Packers the last couple of years, it might sound strange to say the Packers have a good defensive back. They do have one, and this is that one. Again, much like Joyner, this is a player with versatility, playing safety, playing at corner. He can contribute both ways. He's an experienced player. I think he's the kind of guy that could go to any team, make them better. Particularly with the experience, I think that's essential. At the safety position in particular, a lot of teams with a need for safeties. I think that Burnett's going to be paid pretty handsomely. And unless the Packers are willing to franchise him, I think they'll find it difficult to retain his services.
I'm not going to disagree. Sorry, I'm actually fiddling with the live recording program we're using.
Fair enough. If I have to list teams that need a safety right now, I could be here forever. So,
basically, are you the Vikings, one half of the Cardinals?
Cardinals won't look at themselves as needing a safety at this point. I wouldn't think.
No, they won't. I mean, Buda Baker's crap, but that's not the point.
He's a rookie. You need to cut rookies, especially with your scheme, a little bit more slack.
Our previous scheme as it stands right now.
Well, we'll see how things change, yes. But yeah, Burnett, one of them players I can see going to just about any team in football. I'm edging towards the Packers finding a way to retain him, even if it does mean franchising him. They've got a new front office in town. Maybe they'll be willing to do these kinds of things or give some of these players big contracts. Which they've been fairly loath to do on the defensive side of the ball. Other guys, the defensive back position that are well worth, I think, a look. EJ Gaines was very good for the Bills this year. I think he's the kind of player that would benefit going back to the Bills. They had exceptional play from Tre'Davious White, the rookie this year. So he got to be in a nice number 2 role. Maybe if he can go replicate that somewhere like Arizona, that'd be great. I think he might go chase the money. May end up being a bad move for a team. But this guy should stay in Buffalo for me. Rashawn Melvin of the Colts. He's been up and down, played quite well for the Colts last year. Similar situation. Should probably just stay with the team that he's on. We've got Patrick Robinson, managed to probably rehab his stock a little bit with the big pick six that turned around the NFC Championship game. He has been, when he's been bad in his NFL career, he has been terrible, but he played pretty well this year. Turning 31, I expect him to get a mid-level contract, possibly end up a starter on a team this year. We've got Prince Amukamara, only 26. It feels like he's been around a while. I mean, he could be playing for his 4th team.
I remember him being drafted.
Yeah, he was one of them.
It seems like he was only drafted yesterday. It's really weird.
It was about 4 or 5 years ago now.
No, I know. It just makes me feel old.
Yeah. This will be his 4th team.
It wasn't.
But
if I remember correctly,
he can't stay healthy. Yeah, 7-year career he had.
Wait, hold on. If I remember correctly, he was originally drafted by the Giants.
Yes.
Ah, yes, I got one right. Because I remember us having a giggle because his name was Prince.
Yeah.
At least I did, and all I had in my head was Purple Rain.
His dad's called King.
Oh,
No, he is.
No, I'm not doubting that.
Yeah, this is a good player, but just no ability to stay healthy. He'll probably continue doing this 1-year prove-it contract dance with teams. Again, it's the kind of player that could end up anywhere. Kyle Fuller is another tough one for the Bears. I remember when I was saying that he might be, in the rotation this year, having Bears fans mocking me for this. He ended up in the rotation this year and played quite well, but not good enough that you'd be happy to pay him starter money, I don't think. There's a lot of talent here. I'd probably bring him in if I'm one of them lower end teams, maybe as a nickel back, hoping he can compete for a nickel spot. And just hope that talent can turn him around, but wouldn't have much confidence in him. Darquez Dennard, similar kind of deal with the Bengals. 1st round pick, was a bit of a bust. Had a fairly solid season last year. However, I'm never a fan of players that only play well in their contract year. So he's another one. Maybe look to give him a 1-year prove-it deal and see where things go. Then we got a couple of safeties. Trade Boston. He's an experienced player considering his age, but I don't think he's the most talented player in the world. I think staying in San Diego would benefit him at this point. They've not got much back there. He knows the scheme. I think he could really continue to improve his game most while he's there. Marcus Gilchrist for the Texans. Coming off an injury like half of the Texans roster, he could be a good signing for a team. Again, I'm not going to list teams that need safety because it is just about everyone. And then Tyvon Branch for the Cardinals. He was having an exceptional year before going down with injury. Depending how he's recovering from that, it was a torn ACL. Considering the time of year, who knows if he'll be fully ready for camp and things. Maybe just going back to Arizona where he's been in the scheme, it would be the best move for him. He was exceptional for them last year. I'd imagine they'd probably have the most interest in retaining him. Beyond that, we'll go to the receiver position. I feel like there's a bit of depth there, but again, we're lacking on top-end talent. I mean, the top player at the position is probably Jarvis Landry. It's not the scariest group, but Landry is a fine player. We were discussing this before we went on air. How do you pay Jarvis Landry? You're not giving him number one money.
No, no. I was just thinking. I wasn't just being silent. I was thinking. This is a good question. I mean, hold on. So Jarvis Landry, we're looking at someone who's his skill set is damn good slot, if I'm remembering correctly.
Arguably.
I'll be honest. I barely watched the Dolphins at all this year, bar the implosions, which you could argue was most of the year, but still.
Well, since he entered the league, bear in mind this is the same draft class with Mike Evans, Odell Beckham, and all that lot. Very good draft class.
Wah.
He's had more receptions than any player in that draft class.
Hold on, let me think. How would I pay him? I would pay him.
And he's only 25.
I know. Yeah, no, I know he's still young. Anquan Boldin money. When Boldin went to the Ravens, that's what I would pay him.
But Boldin got that money because he was an aging, in theory, declining player. This is a player entering his prime.
Oh no, sorry, no, I'm fine then. Pay him like the Cardinals originally paid Boldin then. Not top money, but still decent.
They paid him number one money at first.
Well, it's because we drafted him in as a number one, then we went, oh my god, Larry the Legend has come to town. Here's all of the money ever. Please stay with us.
Yes, it's tough. I mean, you can.
I mean, without I'll be honest, without looking at, and I'm not bringing it up now, without looking at average pay for slot receivers and number two receivers in the league, I can't say either way.
Well, you're looking at.
I mean, Landry's also
You're looking at a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, Landry's
so
lucky,
number one receiver, you're probably looking at like 15 mil plus.
Yeah.
And number two, 10 mil, that kind of range, 9 to 10, and then beyond that, it's significantly less.
Yeah. However, I'm going to let you carry on this podcast quickly. I've got something to attend to. Sorry, hold on. Carry on.
Right. So, I do think Landry will be able to command number two money from somewhere. I feel like the Dolphins do need to resign him. He's been a leader there, one of the more respected players. And really, seeing where he was drafted in his skill set, I don't know if you could have asked for much more from him as a player. I'm not sure what direction this franchise is heading in, but this is a player that I can imagine if they let him go, he'll probably end up with the Patriots somewhere down the line, and they'll end up regretting it because that seems to be what their receivers do. They don't need Wes Welker or Chris Hogan happening again. So I'm edging towards the Dolphins finding a way to get it done, but I'm not enormously confident when I say it. I think he'd be an excellent fit for the Raiders. I think he's the kind of player Gruden would love to have, the ability to move him around. Similarly with the Redskins, they're a team that values the short passing game. The Chiefs as well, I think that would be a great spot for him. Be wonderful weapon for them to have there. They do like their screen passes. Tyreek Hill's gives them the deep threat. They'd have Kelsey for the intermediate stuff and Landry to get the short stuff. I think that would be a really nice fit. But I really do think the Dolphins need to look to keep this guy on the roster heading into next season. Josh Gordon, the great anomaly. Still hard to believe he's back in the league. Still only 27, however, and the talent there is legit. Saw it toward the end of this season. He's got to stay with Cleveland, surely. They've stuck with him for this long. Should stay with them just out of respect. Similar level, you got Allen Robinson. He came off a big injury, or is coming off a big injury. Young player, lot of upside. He could end up being the highest paid player in this group. The Jags, I think they've got to try and keep hold of him. If there's one position group that they do need to bolster, particularly if they were to let him leave, it would be the receiver position. I think just maintaining a guy that has some degree of a rapport with Blake Bortles. I mean, he managed to have a massive season a couple of years ago. I think it was around well over 1,000 yards. If he knew that with Bortles, kid's got some talent. So yeah, keep him in town. They've got the cash to do it. Franchise him if need be. See where he's at. Coming off of this big injury, but we have seen guys like Keenan Allen having a lot of success coming off it. If not, I think this is a player a lot of teams could potentially be interested in that are in the market for a number one type of receiver. I'm not sure he's got the talent to be a high number one, but the Bears, this I think would be a perfect player for them to go after if he were allowed to slip the net. Similarly, the Jets, the Browns, these are all teams would be massively improved having this guy on the roster. Watkins, we've already discussed. Frankly, not too much else at the wide receiver spot. Running back thin, I think beyond Lev Bell, I think Carlos Hyde is the most intriguing other player there. The Niners are always a tough one because it is a roster with a real lack of talent. There were a lot of rumours last off-season that Hyde wasn't a good fit for the system and they'd look to move on. However, I do think he played quite well, but as always, he managed to find ways to get dinged up and miss games, which has been the story of his career. San Fran, flashing, greatness at times and then getting hurt. I think we're looking at a player who's likely to stay put. However, could certainly see him going to a team pretty late on in free agency. I don't think there'd be a massive push for him considering the injury history, but I could definitely see him with the Giants or the Colts next season. Potentially even the Bucks. They've got a big need at the running back position. The offensive interior, did mention earlier, I think this is a position of strength. Andrew Norwell, probably the headliner of this group, the Panthers guard. Difficult to imagine them being able to give him top money. They paid Trey Turner as well. However, I think they may be more incentivized to do so with the news that Ryan Khalil is going to retire after this season. The interior is essentially, they drafted another running back high up. They have traditionally had first-round picks running the ball for them for a very long time now. With McCaffrey, obviously you've got the run. Cam Newton is going to be running regardless of what kind of offense they're going to be utilizing. Protecting him up the middle of the field is essential. This is a guy who has ball security issues if he's suffering from too much pressure. He's benefited from having those two together. I think they're going to need to try and find a way to get this guy under contract. It may just mean having to eat up 3 massive contracts for Cam Newton and those two guards. But I can't see him letting him go, especially considering his age. If he is allowed to go, look for the Giants to come in pretty strong, I would think. The Bengals, the Buccaneers, the Ravens. There's a lot of teams that could be looking for some high-end guard play, and this is a guy that you can get a good 7-8 years out of, you'd have to think. So, top talent. I'd love to see him in a Bucs uniform next year. I'm not sure it's going to happen. Justin Pugh, also a very good player. Hard to imagine the Giants letting him go. He's been their best lineman for a number of years on what's been a terrible line. Don't let that kid you, though. This is a versatile player who can played the tackle position in a pinch. I don't think he's great at playing tackle by any stretch, but he's a very good guard. I can't see the Giants letting him go. They've got the cap room to keep him. I see that being the case. Juwan James, all right, he's an offensive tackle, but we'll stick with the offensive line theme for now. Again, what are the Dolphins doing? Letting some of these players get this close to the market? I'm not sure. He's been pretty solid for them as a right tackle ever since he was drafted. But I think they're perhaps hoping that they can upgrade that spot, get someone a little more athletic. I think that's madness. Finding tackles in this league is very, very difficult. They really should not, going to be 26, talented tackle. Yeah, be madness to let him go. If he does hit the market, countless suitors, Arizona, both New York teams, the Giants and the Jets, Bengals, the Seahawks, of course. The Seahawks need O-linemen. Could see him in San Fran. A lot of teams would be in the market. I could see him being paid very, very highly. Perhaps that's what the Dolphins are looking to avoid. They don't even they're not even willing to entertain some of the numbers perhaps the agent's thrown out there. We'll see. I would certainly consider franchising him if need be. Tackle play. Look at the two teams who had in the Super Bowl. They had good tackle play. They were playing in the Super Bowl. We've got Jack Newhart at the Colts, another very, very good guard. I can't see him going anywhere. You know, this is a team that if it has to prioritise protecting Andrew Luck, and with Frank Reich coming over from the Eagles, he knows the value of having a high-end offensive line. Can't see him going anywhere. As mentioned above, several teams in the market for interior linemen. You're looking at the same suspects, frankly, if anything were to happen. You've also got John Sullivan of the Rams. I think the Rams will look to maintain him. He's 33. He's not going to cost them a huge amount. He's stepped in, him and Andrew Whitworth, and improved the quality of line play there enormously last year. Hard to imagine them letting him go. And I'd imagine he'd probably want to stay after producing such a good season at such an advanced age. That one seems natural. Whew. And before wrapping up, I'll just go over a couple of the other top players on this list. I've not mentioned certain positions, but frankly, there's not a huge amount there. So, that's my logic, and I'm sticking to it. We look at the defensive line. You've got Ezekiel Ansah. I've already discussed DeMarcus Lawrence. Clearly the most talented player of the remaining players. I don't know how you pay this guy. He's had a couple of very productive seasons, a couple of not so productive seasons, massively inconsistent this year. He's suffered a ton of injuries. He's going to get paid simply because there's a real lack of players available at that position. And there's a lot of teams that need to find pass rushers. I mentioned earlier, I could certainly see the Buccaneers being a team that could be interested. Could even see Buffalo, to be honest. Do another rusher. The Dolphins, countless teams, frankly, could have an interest. The Lions, I don't think they can necessarily afford to let him go. Defensively, they've not got a huge amount of talent. This is a deal I see them getting done, but I'm expecting the numbers to be far bigger than the Lions would like. But I can't see them letting him out the door. If not, I'm expecting the Buccaneers to make a big move for him because they need to get some production at that position instantly. Sheldon Richardson, what an up and down career he's had. However, the Seahawks gave up quite a lot to go get him last off season. Hard to imagine them letting him go. He is still only 27, even if it does feel like he's been around a fair bit. A lot of teams would have an interest in him. You'd have to think if he hit the market, but yeah, I just can't see him leaving Seattle. And then, arguably the most interesting bit of this year's free agency, and it's not often the case, is the QB market. So we've already mentioned Cousins. Did a video on him last week, and Drew Brees. But beyond that, there's a lot of names. We'll start with the Vikings. I mean, they've got 3 guys that have played QB for them to a reasonable standard in the last couple of years in Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, and Case Keenum. It is very difficult to know exactly what direction they're going to go in. They've not got a guy on the roster at the minute. We've mentioned this before with regards to Bridgewater. I think it's pretty damning if the Vikings don't show an interest in him. They know better than anyone, of course, the severity of the injury that was suffered and how he's come along in the rehab, of course, how he's looked in practice. If they're not interested in re-signing him, I think that would concern me if I was one of the other franchises. If he's not starting for the Vikings next year, I don't think he's starting at all. Keenum, I'd have thought if they were really looking into maintaining him as the starter, I think they'd have looked to get a deal done already. I've not heard too much about there being an interest from the Vikings in doing so. And I think Keenum's going to want to cash in. I could see him ending up somewhere like Buffalo or New York, one of the teams that is in clear need of a quarterback, but may not get the guy they want. And in the case of the Jets, could easily be drafting, a team that drafts a guy like Josh Allen potentially, is going to need somebody to start from day one. I cannot see Josh Allen playing in week one of the 2018 season based on what we saw from his college play. Sam Bradford, I mean, is such a difficult one because he is capable of playing the quarterback position to an exceptionally high level, but he absolutely cannot be trusted to stay healthy. I mean, would he be? He may just have to accept being paid as a backup. He's a pretty high-end backup if you can get him at that kind of price, but just I'm not so sure. Who knows? I could certainly see him ending up on a team like the Browns, where the Browns, I think, will have the ability to perhaps pay him a bit more. They've got the cap space, and depending how things work out in the draft and the rest of free agency, I think it'd make a lot of sense there. He knows the pressures of being the first pick. He, assuming he can stay healthy, will be ready to step in right away. And he's playing a lot of schemes at this point, so he might give him a chance to win. If he gets hurt, then the rookie can take over, I suppose. But definitely not a player you can invest an enormous amount in. You've got some other guys that I'm not sure where they're going to be come the start of free agency. You know, guys like Tyrod Taylor. This is the year where I'm kind of now with the Bills. This year I saw little to no progress from him. As much as I don't think he's a bad quarterback by any means, I think he's a decent option as a starter. I don't think you can look at an offense with him in and think that this is a team that's going to be able to challenge for a Super Bowl anytime soon. So, as much as Buffalo kind of feels like the right kind of team for him because they've got an offense that's been very, very much played to his strengths. Yeah, his welcome there, I think, has been worn out with this front office. I think he'd be a very intriguing fit in Minnesota, but I do not see that being the case. Where can I see Tyrod next year? I mean, honestly, I don't know. I think he may have to accept a backup role somewhere. I'm not sure there's going to be a huge amount of teams queuing up to have Tyrod Taylor as their starter based on the film from the last couple of seasons. AJ McCarron, he recently won his appeal against the league to become a free agent at the end of this season. This is an intriguing player. I mean, it could easily be a Brown if they hadn't messed up faxing. Who faxes in this day and age? The NFL, apparently. He looks impressive in spot duty. I wouldn't be willing to commit enormously to him. I remember him coming out of college. I think he's got a very limited upside. The fact he's a backup to Andy Dalton, which is pretty much what I see his ceiling as, it is very appropriate. Can certainly see him being a bridge quarterback for one of these franchises that might be looking to bring in a rookie or a team just looking to improve its backup situation enormously. Looking at you, New York Giants. And that's some of the top players available. At some point close to free agency, I think we'll go over some of the players that we think could potentially be of enormous value that teams might be able to pick up a little bit later in free agency. You know, not the kind of players there's going to be a mad dash for, and you're not going to see absurd contracts thrown out. So we'll throw that list out there. Starting next week, we're going to be doing a weekly top 10, as well as starting to break down some of the team needs for each of the divisions coming up, or each of the teams within certain divisions coming up over the course of the next few weeks. We'll get through them. I'll probably start with the AFC North next week, since the Browns do have the first pick in the draft, as well as, I mean, as many draft picks as I've ever seen a team have in the first 3 rounds. And then we'll start focusing on some draft stuff. So we're going to have regularly scheduled programming. Wednesday will be an episode, as well as our weekly top 10. And we're hoping to have a live stream run every Saturday. Once all that's finalised, I will let you guys know. I don't know if Dan's back at the computer yet to
No,
actually end this
no,
recording?
no, I am. I'm here to end.
Ah, you are. Splendid. So, although you were missing for a large chunk of it, thanks very much for watching, guys. It's been a pleasure as always. As always, like, share, subscribe, check out the rest of the channel, and go Bucks.